It now gives me great pleasure to invite Rich R., who has come to share with us on the topic Sunlight of the Spirit.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rich, and I'm an alcoholic. Um, Sunlight of the Spirit. Charlotte, good to see you. Maya, good to see folks from yesterday. Um, in order for me to get to the sunlight of the Spirit, I had to come from a very, very dark place. And such I did. And in that place and in that condition, I was very unable to handle situations that baffled me. Everything baffled me. Um, since I saw you guys yesterday, I went to a meeting yesterday and to see a friend of mine share, and I worked later that evening. I'm still at work now, so I've been awake for about 20 hours, I think, something like that. But I don't normally have all my equipment. I don't have my things. I normally feel frazzled or falling apart, or I just would not show up to those kind of things. Anything that made me uncomfortable, I would just run away. But I'm just glad to be here. So I may or may not, if something drastic happens, I may have to leave early. But other than that, let's do this. All right, Mel and Becky. Mel with 7 months and Becky with 105. All right. So if you've had 100, this is what I do in my home group. If you've had 105 days, can you throw up a heart on the screen to let Becky know that she's in the right place, doing the right things? That we've had to have exactly what she had for that thing to work. And she is surrounded by some tremendous people. And I just know that because this is part of a fellowship that I'm in. And you will find those that look, sound, and believe in the things that you want to have, which is bask in the sunlight of the Spirit. All right, get all that housekeeping stuff out of the way. Um, before I got to the point where I'm at today, my life was I was an alcoholic right away, but I was alcoholic. I did alcoholic things early on without alcohol, and I never really understood that. And what that means is that I my first 10 years of my life was seemed pretty much normal, meaning that things connected, my actions and my responses connected, my interactions with other people connected. I could just take life as it comes. And I didn't have any questions. Everything seemed to flow like it should. And I was okay with that. I had a chemical imbalance issue when I was about age 10, which really transformed the rest of my life. And but that's not why I'm alcoholic. I'm alcoholic because of when I have alcohol in my system and where it was taking me, and I didn't care where I was going as long as I had it with me. So at age 10, I came from parents that had kind of a two different sides. My mother did not drink, and my dad came from a family of drinkers. Actually, my grandmother and my grandparents had an after hours place at their home, like in the 60s and 70s. My dad didn't even know this. I had to tell him this. I guess he was away in the military and some other stuff. But my mother came from, her mother was one of 12. And of the 12, six of them did not make it to 40 because of alcoholism. And all of them struggled with alcoholism except for my grandmother. I didn't know that too much later. My mother is the type to not make excuses. So she didn't want to give me an out on things or give me a belief that that's going to happen to you. She felt that you were responsible for your own actions and you can make adjustments as you go. That was her belief system. When my parents got together, because my father was my stepfather, when they got together, they were just incredible people. They were just people that everybody loved. They could do things that I just thought was like magic. They didn't seem to have any fears. Magic looked like to me. I have a brother that's 10 years younger than me, and I didn't. So I was raised like an only child. So I didn't have that other sibling to kind of bounce things off of. I didn't really know how to feel. And so when I started having difficulties chemically in my head, some depression issues, I didn't know how to react to that. And what that feels like is that I felt disconnected. It felt like I could take an action and my emotions didn't react to those actions. I just felt indifferent. And a lot of people feel like you feel indifferent around other people. Some alcoholics say that. I'm an alcoholic that I felt indifferent to myself because I knew how I used to feel. And I knew that, so I had a baseline of where what it should feel like, and it just didn't. And this is where the I, self, and me, the ism of the alcoholism comes in. The I, self, and me. And the ME is my ego. I started doing alcoholic things before the alcoholic. So a normal person has a situation, they take action on it to correct it because they don't like how things are. When I don't like how things are, I withdraw. I feel like things are happening to me and not for me. That's the difference of hope and hopelessness. Hopefully I can get to that, and hopefully that's how I'm living today. And when you withdraw, what you're basically doing is um, watering your fears. And I was growing fears exponentially. Yesterday, a friend of mine was sharing in a meeting, and she says, all you need for this program in step 4 is faith and fearlessness. Well, I just had fear and more fear. I didn't have any fearlessness. When I had alcohol in my system, I wouldn't call that fearless. I would call that recklessness. And I got that later on. And so as I withdrew from things, because I thought life was happening beyond my control, without my opinion, and I couldn't handle that. And I had grown up to understand with my little 10-year-old to 15-year-old mind that if something's wrong, it has to be on the outside. It can't be on the inside. You never look on the inside. And so the people, places, and things on the outside were normal. And I just couldn't fathom that it was me. I just kept thinking, I go, there's good things happening around me, yet I feel indifferent. And let me tell you the process of my alcoholism. I went from having no questions to not caring to being indifferent, then having alcohol in my system, being curious, having more alcohol in my system, being adventurous. More alcohol made me reckless. More alcohol made me dangerous to myself and others around me. But along that process, I'm withdrawing and my voice is going away. I remember my mom telling me that she goes, wow, I hear you talk outside, but you don't talk in the home. So my teen years, I felt like a stranger in my own home. I talked to my parents when I had to, when I needed something or they needed me to do something, and I had to have a response. But otherwise engaging in conversation, I was disinterested. I had one thing on my mind constantly: what happened? Why me? And when is somebody going to fix this? Can't you tell I'm not okay? Can't you tell this doesn't feel right? I was a living scream without a mouth. And I just couldn't deal with that. I couldn't address that. I didn't understand how that worked. And I couldn't express that. I remember things got really dark over the years and with time. And what happens is that I found alcohol. And alcohol plugged my emotions back together. You know, this program talking about, I'm going to refer back and forth with the sunlight of the spirit and kind of explain to you my understanding of that. But what happens is I am the type of guy that I need to have the interaction. I need to understand, is this okay? Because I'm starting to guess. So when I had alcohol in my system, I felt equal with peers. I felt like I went back to where that I didn't question anything. Everything seemed okay. I was accepting of things. I didn't question anything. And I started living that kind of a life. And I came from a house, my mom was a very woman of faith. And my dad, he demonstrated his faith through my mom. And so he more or less had the information, but my mom actually applied the faith. I didn't understand any of that until I got to this program. That was my problem. I had got the information about faith early on, but I didn't know how to ask what to do with that information. That's the alcoholic in me. And when you are without direction, you will seek pleasure. And between 10 and 16, when I'm starting I should be developing a direction in my life. I had none. I had no desires that lasted longer than fantasies. I was delusional in my thinking because I knew that it would take a lot of steps to get to where I wanted to be, and I knew that asking somebody would have to be part of the process, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that, and I realized that. So if I didn't have direction, I sought pleasure, and it dressed itself up as alcohol. That was the pleasure. And let me tell you how in our material it talks about obsession of the mind. And my life as I lived it was unbearable. It was dark. It was gloomy, and it was frighteningly scared because I'd go week in, week out, or summer times where friends and family will come back with experiences, what they've done, what they've learned, what they've grown into, and I had none. So I'm starting to try to figure out what I should be doing at I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where I was at. I was misshapen, as they say. And coming from a person of faith, what that looked like is that these people didn't have to know the answers in order to take the steps. My mom and dad didn't have to do that. They could just do it. And it was like watching magic. I go, how can you just do that without knowing for sure? Because that's the difference between knowledge and faith. I thought I had faith. All I had was knowledge because I did not exceed the borders of knowledge. I stayed within that little box of what I knew because it was comfortable for me. And that's how I lived. And that's how I address myself. And so obsession of the mind like this worked for me. Life was unbearable. It went nowhere and had no meaning. I was just doing it because that's what you did. Well, when I found alcohol, my life had meaning all of a sudden. I had meaning Friday night from 9 to 1, Saturday night from 9 to 1. There was meaning in my life. There was where I could interact with my peers. I could be one with my peers. And I wouldn't say that I felt whole, but I stopped thinking about feeling different. That's what alcohol did for me. It was my coping mechanism to not have to feel different, not have to be reminded that I was different. And so this went on, and I lived my life. So the thing about alcohol is that your emotions can supplant your beliefs so easily. And that's what mine did. And when I say that is that all the things that were so torturous Monday through Thursday were all of a sudden bearable because I could point to alcohol. The thing about hope is that it has to point to something. And I pointed to Friday and Saturday because hope without a direction is basically wishing. You're just waiting for some randomness of goodness to happen. And I did that before alcohol. So I took my alcoholism and I took the ism with the alcohol. So now I'm fearful, but alcohol gives me this thing where I can suppress my fear. So now I'm going through high school. I get out of there. I'm intellectually ready for college. Emotionally and spiritually, I am not, because I'm still watering my fears with Miracle-Gro, over and over again, and that's all I'm really doing. So I get to school, and my alcoholism changes the way I hear, the way I see, and the way I think. And when I say that, what I mean is that what do I hear? When my mother tells me that she loves me, what I heard was, "What's wrong with you? I feel sorry for you." That was never said. When my dad says, "You need to start asking for help. No man can do this by himself. You need to ask for help." What I heard was, I don't think you can do it. You might as well let me do it anyway. How it changed my vision. I could see all of your strengths and only my weaknesses. And I thought my weaknesses were so glaring to you like a spotlight. That's where the irritable, restless, and discontent, that's where the terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair come from. And all of those things are just basically ways that I treat my resentments. I dress my resentments up in those different fashions. In my terror, in my bewilderment, in my frustration, in my despair. I dress that's where every single thing. Terror. Why do I have to be afraid? I didn't do anything. Bewilderment. Why can't I understand this? Why do I feel so far behind everybody? Frustration. When is this ever going to end? When am I ever going to be just okay? And despair. This has lasted way too long, and it's not fair. That's how I dress up my resentments. That's how I live my life. And I keep it to myself. I'm still screaming on the outside and nonverbal, or screaming on the inside and nonverbal on the outside. You know, my answers are always, I don't know. How are you doing? Okay. You don't look okay, then I would just withdraw. You know, and so when you don't have your own belief system, you develop your own. So the ones that my parents had didn't seem to work for me. It seemed like it worked around me. I could see it, which was also very cruel, but I could not apply it. And so I developed my own. And my own is every mistake, I would just tell myself that it'll be different next time. It'll be different. You just need another chance. It's not your fault. We have this thing called blind spots, alcoholics like me. What's a blind spot? It's that I can't reference one of my past alcoholic mistakes in order to make a good decision related to alcohol this time. And I always wonder why that was. Why do I see it after the fact? One reason is that I'm living by intentions and not actions. In my mind, I have already decided that things don't count unless I intended to do them. So the mistakes and the alcohol related incidents that I had were never my intention. So those are, I'm not responsible for those. So yes, I might have been involved. Yes, I was probably there, but that wasn't my intention. So how can you be mad at me? This is how I'm starting to evolve. I am 18 to 20 and I'm acting like an 8-year-old. I have the processing power of an 8-year-old. And so after college, after 2 colleges in 1 year, I joined the military. That's how I got out to Hawaii. So after 3 years in the military, all I was 3 years older. And I was drinking every day. I wasn't drinking alcoholically, but it was definitely my medicine and my daily regimen to suppress the feeling that I am ill-equipped, maladjusted, and fearful of almost anything. Let me tell you about one of the things that I was afraid of. I never changed a tire of a car until I got into sobriety. The reason I got that the reason I didn't is because there's a couple of opportunities that I had. I wouldn't do that because the fear of somebody driving a car on a wheel that I put back together with my fearful and low self-esteem and a lack of confidence, I would not be able to bear somebody getting hurt over that. So I just wouldn't. So I would never put myself in those kind of positions. I knew I had an obsessive and compulsive behavior early on. And what that means is that I can suppress, I want to be wanted more than my safety. That's why when an alcoholic is looking in the mirror, he's looking at the enemy and he's looking at the solution at the same time. Well, later on, I'll fast forward and then go back. My wife and my daughter are great swimmers. And I remember that I'm living in Hawaii and I didn't go in the water the last 7 years before I got sober, as my alcoholism was growing. The reason I didn't go is that I had such an internal need to be wanted and be around those that wanted me that I would do anything. I'm a okay pool swimmer, but an ocean water swimmer, I would not consider myself that. And if my daughter or my wife did this, come out to where they were, it would be like hypnotizing me. I would go out there. The reason I know that is because I did that before and I almost drowned. And so I would rather, they have this saying that they say that people are really uncomfortable with public speaking or death. They'd rather be dead than to be the guy giving the eulogy. And it's kind of the same thing, that I would rather be humiliated than embarrassed, because embarrassed is just, humiliation has happened so many times, but to be embarrassed and have nowhere to run is almost unbearable. I physically can't take that. And so as I'm winding through my 20s, my alcoholism is growing, and my despair and the light that I had, my parents had prepared me for a life that had a candle like a Roman candle. It was bright. And I'm using the last part of that wick just to get me going. So my light is dimming fast. And I used to just tell myself, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. My moral standards had dissolved to nothing. I went from a person that was maladjusted in his room, not speaking to his parents, not speaking to hardly anybody, to 7 years later, being a male stripper in Waikiki. I just wanted to be where I was wanted, and it didn't matter what moral boundaries that it crossed, what I needed to do. I would be who you needed me to be, and I was fine with that. And I just lived like that. And it wasn't until I got into Alcoholics Anonymous that I'm not the type that even can go easily. I went through a work thing where they sent me to somewhere and they gave me, a lady said, you should go to these meetings. And she said, I'll mail you a meeting schedule. I didn't open up the envelope because I felt that I'd be obligated if I did. So I didn't. And so my alcoholism went for 7 more years. But at that time, it was getting more and more. And me telling myself, me rebuilding my life. And by then I had a wife, 2 kids, and tearing down my whole life and rebuilding it over the next 8 months. I had done that numerous times, to the point that there wasn't anything left for me to believe that it would be different. And so I just stopped. I was in total darkness. I remember my wife telling me one time, she just saw me just sitting there, just staring at the ceiling. And she says, if it's me, I'll leave you right now. And I said, only thing honest I said, I was like this way before you. It had been so long that I couldn't remember when I wasn't like this. That's how unbearable it was. And so I went into treatment, and I got my first glimmer of hope. And I knew something was different. I knew it wasn't emotion this time, because I was confusing faith with willpower and emotion. Because I was willing to do something that I knew, I thought that was faith. And it really wasn't, because when I came across that stumbling block, I didn't know what to do. And that's where faith steps in, with a power greater than yourself. I didn't know this yet. I just remember sitting in a room with 43 people or 44 people, and they said, only 3 of you guys are going to make it a year. And I'm the type that never wants to be out front, never wants a spotlight on himself, hates to be embarrassed, hates to feel like, and I just verbally said, I don't understand this. You're going to have to explain this to me. Why can't we all make it? I don't understand this. There wasn't anybody to my right or left that I did not want to make it. That's still true. There's nobody in any room that I am that I don't want to make it. And I truly believe that you can. I truly believe that I am the hopeless type. They call this the last house on the block. I drove by that house many a times. When they found me, there was nothing left on the inside or the outside. There was just darkness. I was just devoid of everything. And I knew something was different. I didn't know what was light yet, and I didn't know a higher power was working quite yet. I just knew something was different. I just thought it was emotion at first. But when I always thought that I'm so used to thinking about me all the time that thinking about you diminished me thinking about me. So I always choose me. I have no room. I have no space for you. But when I was able to think about you and elevate us together, I knew that was different. When they told me that you have to do these things, I told on myself. I told them that I'm the type of person that when I feel well, when I get better, when I get some food in my stomach, when I feel like I have some confidence back, I will reject everything I've been told, even though I know that it's saving my life. I would never do that before. I knew that was different. When it was time to leave the treatment center, I realized that I don't want to go. I knew that was different. And so there wasn't a spark yet, but what I realized is that I had a power greater myself working in my life. Basking in the sunlight of the Spirit. What exactly does that mean? That means that I can reference the old rich to the rich that you guys know. I used to be alone, whether amongst 3 people or 1,000 people. Amongst my parents, I felt alone and even lonely. Since I've been basking in the sunlight of the Spirit, since March 19th, 2003, I've never felt alone and I've never felt lonely. I've been awake for 22 hours and I couldn't wait to get here. By the grace of God, nothing's happened, so I can stick around. But it's these kind of things. I got a message yesterday from a guy that gave me this thing about spirit. He goes, follow the Spirit. Out of the blue, this guy gives it to me. One of my another friend from the program sends me something about don't let anything steal your joy. And I text him back, okay, God, thanks for sending Wes to me. I got your message loud and clear. But get back to me in 10 minutes when my doubt creeps back in, because that's how I am. I can get it and I can hold on to it. But what does the sunlight of the Spirit look like? It looks like that I have hope that is pointing towards a power greater than myself. For me, it's the Christian God, but it's really irrelevant. It's really the fact that I have connected with something that leads me to where I want to be all the time. When I say that I'm basking in it, is that I have had prayers not answered. And I know that has nothing to do with my God's love for me. I didn't understand that before. I understand the mistake I made where I had the information at 30, at 18, but I wasn't free until I was 37. It's because I didn't have the application of a God of my understanding to help me through this process that I needed to be able to be the me when I couldn't understand the things I needed to do, of what to do next or how to do it. That I could choose me over everything else. I don't have to be a people pleaser. That I will give you a cheat code, something the kids use in the States. Here's a cheat code. Until you have that relationship with a power greater than yourself, and you do the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, the 4 through 9, all 12. But when you get those changes from 4 through 9, when you make that decision and then take those other steps, my problems are boiled down to this. My problem will always be my thinking, and my solution will be always my God. But until I do those steps, until I have that relationship developed and cultivated, I'll always believe it's people, places, and things that's really my problem. I will blame them first. I will spend hours and days on them, spending my time believing it's something else outside of my thinking. You've told me it's my response to life that's my problem. It's not. Life is happening for me now, not to me. So the good and the bad. When my mother's Alzheimer's never got, my prayers weren't answered, and that did not diminish the fact that I've been the person that wouldn't speak in their home has been done the eulogy for my mother, my father, and my grandmother, asked for by my family because of what you guys have given me. You've given me a life that makes sense. You've given me a life that goes in a direction that's always forward. You actually have trained me. You actually have sent one of your members to take me through the steps. And when I was done, you told me that I was qualified and it was essential that I be available, because at some time, some point, somebody's going to ask me for the same thing that I asked for. And I am qualified to help them. You trust me with somebody else's life, because we're living in a life and death kind of situation. I can't afford to change my sobriety date. It was too hard to get this first one. There was nothing left. The grace of God brought me here because I by myself had nothing left. I was devoid. I was just waiting for the end. Whatever that looked like, I was waiting for it. The job, the family, the kids, the wife, they were all gone. And so I have been able to reestablish and have these relationships with family members that are just um, incredible. Some of our reading says this. It says the doctor's theory is that, but ex-problem drinkers, we say that this explanation makes good sense. It explains things for we cannot otherwise account for. Until I got here, I kept thinking it's people, places, and things, and alcohol had nothing to do with it. Alcohol and my character defects were how I was living life. You've taken my character defects and turned them into things that are valuable to other people. You've given me a life that has no conditions on me wanting to help other people. I didn't know how to do that before. Everything came with conditions. And the conditions are, if I do anything for you, big or small, you are responsible for my happiness. And as an alcoholic, that is a tall task. And I will make you miserable in the process. Not by choice, but that was the only tools I had. Hurting people hurt other people. I only can give away what I have. And I had misery, frustration, and despair. That, no matter how strong you are, you cannot combat that. You guys have given me this life that you telling me that I'm living in the time of miracles, the age of miracles. What does that mean? It means people got sober from doctors, people got sober from psychologists, and people just pulled themselves up just out of the blue. But when we have a stockbroker, a psychologist, and a doctor all getting together, formulating a plan, saying we have a threefold disease and how to attack it. And we're living in that time where people are recovering. People's lives are transformed. People have hope in the most hopeless situations. I can believe when I will believe when there's nobody else wanting to believe. That's what I have today. That's what I bask in. This is what you've given me. I just can't believe this life sometimes. I just can't believe the things that you've given me freely. You've given me this life freely. You've telling me that it's available to others, and I need to go tell other people about that and be available to do that. When I look at the willingness to believe in a power greater than yourself, nothing more was required to make a new beginning. All you have to believe is that you're trying, as much as we want to believe, is never going to be enough. One of my friends out in New York says it this way: the last thing I tried was the first thing that worked. I stopped looking when I got here. I felt that I was home when I got here. I wanted to be a part of something that I didn't have to feel that I was being patronized. I wanted to be a useful person among others. I wanted to bring value to a room instead of diminish the people around me. You've allowed me to do that and watch me grow over this time. You've done this freely. You've been patient with me. That's what I'm basking in. The care and understanding and love of the people God puts around me. Our friend, our mutual friend, I saw a couple members here yesterday at a meeting, and our mutual friend was sick. And I go, I want to see her because there's something about these rooms that I don't get anywhere else. I don't get at work. A paycheck can't do that. Even my family can't do that. But when I see people have that glow in their eyes, when they talk about tragedies that they didn't have to drink over, that means something to me. That has value that other people don't have, because they don't really have the same malady that we have. They don't have the same problems that we have. And I believe that. But it says, but with the alcoholic whose hope is in maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. The maintenance, I don't want that to be confused with maintaining. If you have a maintenance man, he's constantly making sure things are moving forward. So when I hear maintenance, it's that I'm maintaining the things that are making me move forward, living in the steps of 9 through 12. I'm just living in that because that's where the glow comes from. That's where the basking, that's where I can relax and just be me. I told myself last night at 6 p.m., I knew I was going to be late. 6 p.m. last night, I said, you know what, God, I'm not going to worry about this. You're going to have to figure out how this is going to work and what I'm going to need to do. And I'm okay with that. And I go, and I had moments to talk about it because there was constant changes throughout the night. But I didn't spend hours and I didn't put on the uniform like I used to of despair and hopelessness. You guys have put a light inside of me that came from the outside and it stayed on the inside. This basking in the sunlight of the Spirit, it means that I'm living in the fourth dimension. What does that mean? It means that I came from a dimension that the only tools I lived by were fear and judgment. That's how I operated. I reacted to life with fear and judgment. And that's all I had to work with. And I answered that with terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. You have taken me to where I have compassion and empathy. I can think about you and me at the same time, equally, because I want the same for both of us. I'm living in a fourth dimension where there's going to go wrong, that I can have joy in spite of. I remember my sponsor teaching me, he goes, I go to his office and he goes, "Oh, you having a bad day? Somebody steal your joy?" I go, "Yeah." And I would give him some scenario of whatever it was. And he goes, "When are you going to realize that you just gave it away? Nobody can take it from you. It's only given away." And I stopped giving it away as much as possible. I remember that if you want to know the difference between darkness and the sunlight of the Spirit, is that my current sponsor, who was actually my friend when he told me this, he says, the alcoholic is the perpetrator running around like the victim. I'm no longer doing that. I'm no longer having to be the victim. I'm the overcomer of things that used to baffle me. You know, and I live in these meetings so I can live better on the outside of these meetings. I want to be in service. When you see me, I want you to come to my home group. It's my phone number. It's 808-783-5560, 808-783. Actually, the secretary here has my number. It's my home group. It's Monday, 8 a.m. Hawaii Standard Time, Mondays and Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I'm there Monday and Tuesdays. That's my service position. You know, and I just found that I have this freedom. And it says, but the alcoholic's hope is maintenance of growth. We found that it is fatal when harboring such feelings of ourselves, of resentments that diminish the sunlight of the Spirit. I can let those things go. I'm not hiding all my fears and resentments behind other things. I'm looking for solutions to my life so it can make sense and continue to move in a forward motion. Because my God has given me a life that constantly needs a God. I used to have a life that barely needed me. I am 2/3 of my life are things I don't know yet or how I'm going to deal with them. And I'm comfortable living in that space. That's what basking in the Spirit feels like. That I'm given things that I don't need to worry about. They're going to take care of themselves. You know, and it says, when I stopped living in the problem and began living in the answer, the problem went away. You know, and from that moment on, I have had a single compulsion to drink. This is true for me. This is true for me. You know, and I'm gonna end with this. I really like this thing. It says, sharing our experiences with one another and also sharing a mutual trust, understanding, and love without strings, without obligation. We require relationships that are unique and priceless. That's what basking in the Spirit is. That I have trust 0.4 million people wanting me to be better. 1.4 million people on a regular basis praying for the next suffering alcoholic. That could be me on any given day. There is no more aloneness with the awful ache so deep in the heart of every alcoholic that nothing before could ever reach it. The ache is gone, never to return again. Now there is a sense of belonging and being wanted and needed and loved. In return for the bottle and a hangover, I've been given the keys of the kingdom. It's one of the stories in the back of the book. My name is Rich and I'm an alcoholic. I'm so proud to be a member of this fellowship. I want to thank you for allowing me, and I want to thank God for getting me through this and without any interruptions, because I truly value what we do here. And mahalo. Thank you for allowing me to share. I love you guys.